Okay, the thing that I'm going to demonstrate today is called drypoint etching. Traditional etching uses metal and acids to bite lines into materials, and it's quite complicated. This is a much simpler form, but yields some effective results in a similar way. And the material that you use to make a drypoint etching, it's very good to use. You can use thicker acetate, but we've got this kind of slightly heavy-duty acetate, a little bit thicker than overhead projector stuff. And what you need is an image to work from and work with. Now you can work freehand from it, or you can do what I've done and make a tracing. Right? In order to make a tracing, you just fix your piece of acetate down over the image, and then using this, which is an etching tool, you scratch into the plastic. Right? So the method, quite simply, if I add a few more lines just to finish this one off, is to scratch the lines into the plastic. Now it's quite important to press relatively hard to do that so that the scratches go quite deep, because what we're going to do, we're going to fill those scratches with ink, and if you just do it lightly, the process of applying the ink and preparing it removes everything. You don't get a very clear print, so it's important to scratch quite hard. I did this earlier on today, so it's kind of ready to go. Once you've done your preparation of your image, your artwork can go away to one side. As can the etching tool. You don't need that anymore. So the acetate ready to etch. In terms of the workspace, it is organised into, it all looks quite clean at the moment, but a messy area for applying the ink and preparing this, and a clean area for preparing the paper ready to print. It's quite important to separate the two processes, otherwise you end up with fingerprints where you don't want them on your actual print. Right? It's quite important to avoid that. I'm just going to go around to this side here to put some water some paper into the water. While you're preparing the actual thing to print, you need to get a piece of this paper, which is heavyweight printing paper. It's thicker than the ordinary cartridge paper, and the reason it needs to be thicker is that to prepare it, we're going to soak it in some water. So while I'm doing other things, I'm going to leave that in the water. If you're doing a number of prints, you can leave a number of pieces of paper in the water so that they're just kind of soaking away. The reason we do that is to open the fibres of the paper up. It's so that the paper becomes softer and it will take the print better. Okay, so that's going to be soaking over there. Right, the next stage then, I'm going to do some work in the messy area here. It's useful to wear gloves at this stage. We've got disposable gloves. They are quite a tight fit, but they work once generally, but they're quite important to use. Before I put the gloves on, there you go, I've got one or two other things ready, and it's really important to have these things ready. I've got some small pieces of newsprint cut up here, and I've got some small pieces of scrim cut up. We're going to need those in a minute. It's a bad idea to do them a bit later. You want to have that stuff ready. Okay. Now the first thing I'm going to do then to prepare this is to apply some ink. The inks are kept in that cupboard there. They're old printing inks, and they look pretty grim, right? And the reason they look like that is because they get skins on them. They skin up. And the skin's never that thick, and you just need to break through it a little bit to apply some ink. One of the key things that people forget to do with this is that they apply the ink and then they leave dirty brushes with gungy ink laying around. They're really easy to clean, but you need white spirit and a jar and some tissue paper to do it. So again, they're things that you need to have ready before you start printing. So here we go. I've got my ink, my brush and my palette, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to just break through the skin of the ink, and I'm just going to dab a little bit on my palette there, and you can see it's incredibly kind of sticky, gooey ink. And the thing that I need to do now is I need to apply the ink to the surface of this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just daub some ink on like that and work it into the surface of the acetate. I'm going to do it over here so that it can spread over a little bit, and then I can return to a bit lower down on the paper. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm working the ink into the grooves that I've cut on the acetate. Okay, so there it goes. That's the beauty of the gloves at this point. And I'm not putting on more than I need to. That's quite important, because what I need to do as a next step is I've got to remove a lot of the ink. Right, this is the way to apply the ink at this point. Right, so it's got a good coating. Right, the next step then, I'm done with the brush. I can go in the white spirit. That could be ready to re-ink it if I need to make a second print. But this is now ready for the next step, which is to remove the excess ink. And you do that with scrim. Okay. Scrim is just kind of open weave cotton, and what you do with the scrim is you move it just a sideways movement like that, and you just keep turning it, and you see what happens is that the ink starts to get soaked up into the scrim. You're moving it by dragging it sideways. All right. Very important that you do it just gently sideways, and you begin to move the ink off the smooth part of the acetate, but it gets stuck in the scratches. Okay, you can see that beginning to appear as an image, just gently going from side to side. That's got quite a lot off. At this point, I'm going to throw away that really inky piece of scrim, just wipe a bit off, excess off the end of my fingers. And I'm going to get the second piece, just to begin to take the final bits off. Okay, and you can see that the image is beginning to appear. Speed up a bit. Now, you've got choices in terms of how you prepare something to print with. What you can do is you can deliberately choose to leave a thin layer of covering of ink on the shiny bit of the plastic. Right? You could deliberately ink it creatively, so you can like leave kind of blooms of ink and tones, if you like. Right? But what I'm going to do, I'm going to take it right down to the next stage, and to do the fine removal, if you use a little square of newsprint and polish the surface as a next step. Right, you can see that the ink is coming off, but it won't be coming out of the grooves. Right, turn it over. And you can see that. Bit of a battle to get rid of those fingerprints there. What I'm going to do now, I'm just going to do that with my glove, so I'm not making inky fingerprints where I don't want them. It looks like some are on the back now, which is okay. Right. So there is the inked etching ready to print from. The next steps are the clean steps. Right. So at this point, I'm going to remove my gloves, and you can see perfectly clean hands underneath the gloves. That can just stay there for a moment. What I'm going to do now is prepare the paper ready to print with. Before I do that, I'll just draw your attention to how I've prepared the etching press. Right, so we'll just have a little look at this first. It's very important between the blankets here to have some clean newsprint prepared. You've got to do all this before you start. Right, okay. So there's some clean sheets of newsprint that have been cut in the middle of the etching press. I've already checked that the blanket is squared up and ready to go, and this is really tight. Okay, so when I do start to turn this, there's about a ton of pressure gets put on whatever goes through the middle there, so kind of a real tight squeeze. You've got to, if you want to line things up, it's all gone a bit awry, you can loosen these off a lot, and you can actually take this out completely. Okay, and you can move things around, get it all ready, and you just need to give a real good squeeze, as tight as you can on there, and that's ready to go. And then in order to get the press itself ready, you need to get to a nice clean area in the middle here. You can easily make prints on this press up to about A3, okay? But you need to kind of cut slightly bigger paper, and obviously I'm doing a tiny one. A big print takes a lot longer for applying the ink, preparing everything, you know. So you need to allow for that, and you need to make sure you've got enough time to do it. You know, you're not rushing off to another lesson, leaving things half done. You do need to allow plenty of time. So the etching press is ready to go. I'm now going to get my paper ready to print onto, and I've got my newsprint here for blotting, right? And that's ready to blot the paper. So I'm going to take some paper out of here, and you can see it is floppy, right? But it wouldn't print very well because it's completely soaking wet. So very, very simply, all you do is you lay it in the newsprint and take the excess water off, and usually just a couple of goes in there is fine. This newsprint here in the clean area, you don't need to keep chucking this away. You know, newsprint for blotting can be left out, other people can use it, but the messy stuff must go away when you're finished, ready for the next person. So the way to know that it's been blotted enough is that it's floppy but not shiny, because all the excess water's gone. It's just a damp piece of paper ready to print on. What you then do is you put the piece of paper there on the press, ready to go. I'll put it just up there, and then you take the thing that you want to print very carefully, because you've got clean hands now, and then obviously you've got to turn it over so that the inky surface is against the paper. Alright, and just lay it very, very gently right in the middle there. Carefully lay the paper down, lay the printing press blanket down on top, smooth it out, just make sure that's nice and tight and ready to go. Squeeze. And then what should happen is that the pressure of the press will force the fibres of the paper into the grooves that you've filled with ink, and it will take a print. So you then just turn the handle of the press, print goes through like that, blanket out of the way, and then very carefully just find where your print is. And what I'll do, I'll bring it over just closer to the camera, into this area here. I'm not going to put it near the fingerprinty blobs. I'll just lift that off very, very carefully, and you can see that that's a little etching of those windows that's been produced, and it's quite kind of sharp. I'll just hold it to the camera. The quality of those lines, you can't get in any other way. It's a printed etched line, and it's got a certain kind of intensity to it. It is graphic, you know, kind of like a drawing. The beauty of it, of course, is that this now can be used a number of times. I can ink it with different colours, I can combine inks, and I can make a whole series of these. It's a limitless opportunity now to generate print. To make that etched image there took me about 15-20 minutes to do the scratching of the image first thing. So, you know, you get a kind of intensity to the image in that way. Okay, so that's producing the etching. The next thing that you need to do at the end of a session, and I will include this in the demo because it is extremely important, is that if you leave that now, you won't be able to use it again because the ink will dry in the cracks. So what you'll have to do to finish off is you get some white spirit. Don't ever even start this unless there's white spirit to hand, because you will always need that with these inks. Right. You apply the white spirit onto there, and you can put plenty on, and the ink will stain it, but this is a way of getting most of it out of the grooves, cleaning it up. And you can see although that's a little bit stained, the ink has come out, and that's ready to re-ink if you wanted to use a different colour, or at the end of the session you pop this in your book so it's ready for next time, but you must remember to take the ink out. The other thing that you must do at the end of a session is make sure that you clean your brush. This ink comes off these brushes very, very easily with white spirit, but it's not a social activity to leave them uncleaned in this area. So the brush is cleaned, the palette likewise, very, very easy to clean. Just give it a little bit of a wipe. Just get a little bit more of this. So palette's cleaned, lid can go back on there, and the final thing that you need to do is just roll up the messy area, bin it, and that's your final print.